This is Ahead in Tech, career journeys of extraordinary people in tech and interviews that help you get ahead in your tech career. So hello everyone, welcome to the show. I'm here today with Rebecca Appleyard. Rebecca, hello, how are you?
Hi there, I'm good, thank you. Enjoying the weather.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gorgeous today. And thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it. A little introduction to you. Your education, your early career are around mathematics. You were a maths teacher for like 6 years or something like that, quite a while. And then you decide to retrain to coding via bootcamp. Then your first role is at Parliamentary Digital Services, a really respectable like engineering institution here, and organization, of course, where after 2.5 years you hit lead developer, which is amazing. And then you after lead for a while, you go off to an ed tech, I'm assuming it is, called Boclips, which I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
hearing
that's
more
right.
about as well. An interesting point in your career there as well, which I don't know much about. And then you head back to the Ministry of Justice as a lead developer. So, once can be a fluke, but twice, no way. So we're going to be discussing your really, really phenomenal career success. Something really amazing you've achieved, and the direction that you're taking your lead engineering role.
Thank you.
Firstly, yeah. Well, I hope that's a sufficient introduction. I mean, you're quite a person. So now, take me back several years now. Why the move into coding? What's your motivation there?
So I spent quite a few years, as you said, in education. When I was at uni, I did a maths degree, and kind of considering my options when I came out of uni, the sort of two natural choices for me felt like finance or teaching. And I come from a family of teachers, so I knew what kind of teaching was about. So I went into that, and initially I did really enjoy it. I say up until the end, I really enjoyed actually being in the classroom, working with young people, and I enjoy the actual sort of act of teaching and watching people learn and develop. But I think over time, I just sort of got a bit disillusioned. I think in some senses, I got a bit bored. Teaching maths particularly is quite repetitive. The curriculum doesn't really change. So, you're teaching fractions, for example, once you've done it a few times, it's like, okay, maybe there's not so many ways I can mix this up. So I just started to think about, okay, I can't really see myself doing this for the next 30 years. I didn't really want to go into management in teaching because that's the kind of obvious progression. So I just started thinking about like, what are other things I could do? Like, what are my skills that I have? And the coding idea came about. I was at sort of meeting. I went to a party, and a friend of a friend was there, and he taught himself to code. And he was telling me he worked in games development. So he's telling me about I don't know, he was using like trigonometry in his like work and things like that. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, you're using maths, but you're like,
Yeah.
doing this really cool thing. So he was like, yeah, you should just give it a go. Like, why don't you try to teach yourself? And I dabbled in it a bit at university and as a teenager. So I did that, and I spent kind of a summer doing it, loved it. And sort of decided this could be the thing I could do. And so this whole new world kind of opened up, and I think I was lucky. It was at a good time when there were sort of boot camps starting, and this whole kind of teach yourself to code. There were quite a lot of resources online. I sort of made the decision over that kind of academic year. I quit my job in the Easter because I just was like, right, I need to just make a commitment. And then I decided to do makers. I wasn't sure to start with whether I would just try and teach myself or if I wanted to do like a boot camp. But I decided I wanted to learn with others. I felt that would kind of accelerate my learning. So that's why, that's kind of how I ended up going into coding.
The motivation was, or you wanted to get a career in coding. It's not just
Yeah,
an extra skill you wanted to pick up. You thought this was something you would be good at and enjoy.
definitely. I just, when I started to, teach myself, and I was, doing it in school holidays and after work, it was just like this spark. It was like lit up in my brain, and I
Mm,
loved that kind of problem solving. And um,
mm.
I felt like I'm also quite a creative person. Like some of my other hobbies, are, I love to make things, and it felt like I got to meld that kind of logical, mathematical side with my creative side in a way that it was harder to do, like as a teacher. I did try to be creative as a teacher, coming up with creative ways to teach lessons, but you're still doing it within this kind of rigid curriculum framework. And,
Mm.
and there's a lot of time pressure. So there's not always space to be creative, but I felt coding was just that perfect mixture. So I definitely went into it with the idea that this is this could be a new job. This is a new career and a world, just this world opened up, and it just seemed so exciting to me.
And then what was your boot camp experience like? Was it like smooth sailing, bed of roses, everything was super?
I loved it. I have to say,
Yeah.
I loved every minute of it. So I actually, so I left my teaching job on the Friday and I started the boot camp on the Monday. So I had
Okay.
like no break. It really timed really well with the summer holidays. So that's when the summer holidays started, and I just did it. And I was a bit apprehensive going forward because at that time you had like a pre-course bit, and they were like, "Oh, I don't know if you should be still working when you're doing that," but I did it and it was fine. And I loved it. Like I was there every day, like 9 till 6, like, and I know they've warned us before, it's intense, it's really hard work, and it is, but to me it didn't feel like that because I just was enjoying myself so much. I really wanted to be there. And I also knew, because I was going into it, and I knew I wanted to get a job at the end, and I knew this was my sort of, it was a big change, and I quit my job. Like I had to support myself. So I knew I wanted to get the best out of it. And I remember them telling us that as well at the beginning, that you will get into it you will get out of it what you put in. And so I definitely went in with that mindset.
That's a great mindset. And then I'm assuming you found it easy.
I wouldn't say it was easy. I'd definitely done a lot of work before. And so, I mean, I'd basically spent the whole year before teaching myself, and I tried to code, not probably every day, but I tried to do it every day. So I was, I'd done a lot of JavaScript, and I had actually coded a little bit in my degree and a little bit as a teenager, like, very basic, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So that side was quite familiar. Ruby was newer to me. So the bootcamp did Ruby. But to be honest, coming from JavaScript, I think Ruby is a bit more straightforward in some ways. But definitely I had a lot to learn, though, about starting to learn about the theory, object-oriented programming. TDD was new, so testing, all of that was new to me. And also just, which is maybe a theme that's going to come in later, but also just starting to think about the wider picture of how you build software. When you first learn, you're learning syntax and you're just learning the little building blocks of how to put stuff together. But I feel like at Makers, I started to see like the bigger picture of like how to build software and best practices and that sort of thing.
That's a very important thing that they taught us, really, isn't it? And the culture of working in tech teams, right?
Yeah, I think one thing, that was another interesting thing, that you paired every day. And I remember that could be challenging at times because they used to rotate you. So every day you'd be with someone else. And that was a really valuable lesson, like learning to work with other people you don't maybe know very well, or, you'd quickly kind of, maybe they're people you like more than others, but, just learning to work with different people. Pairing is quite can be quite intimate in some ways, and you have to be able to explain what you're thinking, and have you have disagreements about ways of doing things, or and so I think it also was really valuable to teach us that. And I remember them being really sort of strict on that, because we had some people that didn't want to pair, for example, but they really pushed that, and I think that was good, because again, it's a really important part of being a developer, or any role in a software team, is working with others. So I'm glad that they really pushed that.
Moving forward slightly, that first job hunt, what's it like for you?
So I guess once I finished Makers, I approached job hunting in the same way that I approached Makers. I'm a sort of planner, like systematic person. So I was like, okay, I'm going to treat this like a job. Like looking for a job is my job now.
Mm.
And this was another reason I wanted to do Makers, because I knew that they would help with that process as well. I think at that time, their sort of career and job sort of placement, it is not what it is now. It was very much in its infancy. So there was still quite a large aspect of you having to go out and find roles. And that was tough, because you've done makers, you're feeling like, yay, I did this. And then you start to apply. And I remember at that time, like a lot of people in the industry hadn't really heard so much about boot camps, or they had this negative idea of them. And, I remember getting dismissed by people saying, well, what do you know? You don't know anything about software development. You've just done a boot camp. And so with PDS, it was sort of a fortuitous thing. I think someone had a connection with them. So a group of people from PDS came to the office, the maker's office one day. And I was one of a group of people that expressed an interest in applying there. For me, the appeal was I was quite interested in public sector. So, Parliament, Gov. I think having come from a background as a teacher, it felt like that was quite natural to me to want to go to an organization like that. The slightly tricky thing was that at the time, the team I was going into wrote in C#. So had to spend a week or so okay, I need to learn some C# to do the tech test. But did that and interviewed, and I got the role there.
Wow. You make it all sound so easy.
I mean, well, I wouldn't say it was easy. It was definitely challenging, but I don't know. I guess at that point, it's sort of it is hard learning a new language, but at that point, I'd been through a few, and I think one of the things makers taught you was to learn how to learn and to kind of not be afraid of sort of taking on that sort of challenge. I remember at makers that we had, when I did it, they had a week in the middle where you could just do anything. And I remember getting together with people who were like, let's build something in Swift. We knew nothing about Swift, but we managed to hack something together in a week. It was probably awful. But I think it kind of, makers just gave me that feeling of I'm just not going to be afraid. I'm just going to try. Let's see what happens.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic outlook. So now at PDS, roughly 2.5 years go by, and then you hit lead. So where does that story start? How do you end up becoming a lead developer? Not that you just randomly ended up doing it, but how do you get there?
Yeah. So I think it was a mixture again of being in the right place at the right time, but also, I guess, reflecting on this conversation, maybe also my personality to always I like to push myself and I like to feel challenged. So when I started, I was a junior developer in this team writing in C#. After a few months, I got pulled out of that team and put in a new team that was going to be this new team forming, new ways of working. They were kind of embracing agile, pairing, TDD, all these kind of things that makers teaches us about, to build a new website for Parliament. It was a super small team. And it grew kind of over the rest of the time I was there, the kind of 2 or 3 years I was there. So, basically I got to be a founding member of that team. And at the time it was just me and one other developer. So we didn't have that kind of senior technical guidance in the team. There were senior developers and leads that we could speak to in other teams, and being at Parliament meant we got to, speak to people in other kind of public organizations like NHS, Gov, BBC. So it was a great opportunity to be able to, speak to people who, to other technical leaders. But I think it gave us early on that space to kind of lead, which you wouldn't maybe normally get as a junior dev in a team where there are other seniors. And over the course of time, we did get more senior people, but I think because we'd had that experience early on and we'd been forced to kind of make some, decisions or educate ourselves as much as we could to make those decisions. It meant that I was sort of, I guess that's how I just started. And so to me, it made sense that I would always that's how I worked, that I would get input on things like that. And then, over time, so I went from junior to mid, and then we'd been advertising for a lead for a while. We got one lead developer, but they wanted another one. And I just hadn't thought about applying for it at all. Um, and then I was actually on maternity leave. I had my son, and I went in for one of my kind of keep in touch days. And a few members of my team came up and they were like, "We think you should apply for the lead role." And I said to them, "Are you crazy? Like, I can't do that." But they said no, like you're already doing it. You just don't have the title. And that's when I first started thinking about it. And I just thought, oh, are they right? Am I doing these things? And then I had a conversation with my manager, and he strongly encouraged me to go for it. So yeah, that's when I applied. So I was actually on maternity leave when I got the promotion. So then when I came back into the lead role. But I think, yeah, I mean, other things I've been doing, I suppose there is, I started doing getting Code Bar in. So I used to go to Code Bar. I think, well, people don't know, Code Bar is like basically it's a place where you have developers who come as coaches, and then you can go as a student, and it's for underrepresented minorities in tech, so women and people of color, and other people like that. So I used to go as a student, and then I've been a few times as a coach, and I just wanted to kind of give back. So I kind of, volunteered Parliament. Like, so we had Co-Bar a few times. I'd run things like that. I'd started like a tech discussion group. So I guess I've been doing things in the wider department, and in terms of leadership. So I think that was also why I kind of got recognized as a leader there.
And I mean, I think you touch on it precisely right there. Good leaders have to have a good blast radius, right? They have to have an area of effect, right? Things that they're doing far outside of their role for the benefit of the entire engineering culture, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something I'm learning more and more as I progress in my career. But it is, I think, being a leader is starting to think like beyond your team, and to think about the wider department, and helping improve culture, and the kind of ways of working across the whole department rather than just in your team.
That sounds fantastic. And then what motivates the move to bow clips? And then what was that experience like?
The project I was working on at Parliament came to an end essentially, and so there was a sort of a choice I had to make about, okay, I can't be in the team that I was in anymore. Do I want to go to this new team? And I didn't really want to. They worked in a different way, so I sort of decided, okay, I'm going to leave. And when I started to look for a job, I had not considered a startup at all, to be honest. I'd heard some negative stories from other people about life at a startup, and I just, I had a young child at that point. I just thought, I didn't know if it was for me, like, but would I be expected to work really long hours, like this sort of thing. But I got approached by the company, and I really liked the sound of them and all the people I met, and they and also then obviously the teaching angle and the education. I thought, oh, this could actually fit really well. So that's how I ended up there. And it did fit really well. It was a huge challenge technically, because their tech stack was completely different. So it was like starting again. And I remember my first week sort of like just saying to people, honestly, I felt like my brain was melting. And it just felt like, I said, it's like, I know how to do my job, but it's like, now you're asking me to do everything in like, I don't know, German. I don't know German very well. So it's like, I know how to do it, but it's all just in a different language. And it was a steep learning curve. But I learned a huge amount there. And I'm really glad I had that experience. It was also valuable because in the public sector, well, it was the same at Parliament, and it's the same where I am now. I think it's probably similar in the wider public sector, but developer roles are quite compartmentalized. So at Parliament, I'd just been a back-end developer. So you just did that. You don't really do front end. You don't really get to do ops. Maybe you're not involved in data. It's all very compartmentalized. Whereas being at the startup, you do everything. So it was a really good experience to learn about all the different technical parts of making software.
A great combination of two distinctly different but equally challenging and rewarding roles, it sounds like.
Yes, and I mean the startup itself. Yeah, was a I did as well as learning about all the different sort of technical parts of being a developer. I also did a stint as product manager for a bit. So after I'd been there for a year, PM left, and it was right at the start of the pandemic as well. So it wasn't great timing. But yeah, she left. So yeah, I stepped into that role. So and at that time, I'd sort of started because at Bowclips I was sort of back to being just a software engineer again, and I'd sort of started to question like, I don't feel quite fulfilled like just writing code all the time. Like, is this what I want to do? And so I'd already started to think about maybe I want to go into product. Could that be something I want to do? So when this sort of opportunity came up, I said, yeah. Originally, I was like, no, I do not want to do that. But then I thought, okay, no one else is going to do it. I will do it. I will be the product manager. So I did that for about, I don't know how long it was now, 6 months, somewhere between like 4 and 6 months. I did that, and I realized I didn't want to be a product manager.
Right.
So it just got to the point where I just said, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
We need to get someone else. But again, I learned a huge amount by doing it, and it, that's then fed into my role as a software engineer, and yeah, and it was just, I think it just helped me to solidify that, yes, I want to stay in engineering, but maybe I don't want to stay as someone who writes code every day. And it helped me to kind of
Mm.
work out, okay, well, what sort of role do I want to do? And what are the parts of, what are the things that I enjoy doing?
Does that ultimately feed into you then leaving Boat Clips and then moving back to the Ministry of Justice as a lead, where you are now?
Yeah, I totally did. So yeah, after being the PM, I was like trying product and sort of realizing it's not really what I want to do. And I then started, one of the senior engineers from Bowclips, he left, but he started working with me as sort of like a mentor. And one of the first things we did was to explore this sort of career, like where do I want to go? And obviously, like, there are different directions you can take. If you want to stay as the individual contributor role, or I tried product and that wasn't really what I wanted to do. It wasn't quite the right fit. So we started exploring more that kind of like engineering management, like leadership side of things. And yeah, we basically just like got lots of job descriptions and like looked at them and like different aspects and what did I enjoy. Yeah, and then while we were doing it, I'd sort of started to think, okay, I think I want to move on from Bowclips now. And yeah, I saw this lead role come up, and I think if I hadn't been working with him and thinking about the skills that I have, and what am I actually interested in, I don't think I would have applied for it. And even when I did apply, I felt like it was a long shot. I totally didn't expect to get an interview or to get hired. So I was quite shocked when I did. But I think doing that work with him gave me the confidence to even feel like I could apply for that role.
Speaking frankly, you must have been offered many promotions that you've turned down in your life. You must have been offered other roles that you've turned down in your life. This one stuck. These are roles that you identified that you definitely wanted. But was there any apprehension or fear?
Definitely. I mean, I have imposter syndrome, just like a lot of people. And as I said, like when I applied, it felt like a long shot to me. And so when I did get the call, and it was quite a long process, like to do the interview and everything. And then when I did get the call, like I was shocked. I was just in disbelief. I couldn't believe they were going to offer me the job because I didn't feel qualified enough to do it. I haven't actually been a developer for that long. Sometimes I feel a bit like I missed out on being a senior, if that makes sense. Like
Mm.
I sort of went into leadership quite quickly, and so it did feel a little bit. It felt really daunting. And at the time when I got offered that, I had also been offered a job as a senior software engineer somewhere. So that would have been like sticking with that more IC track and like committing to that. And then there was this leadership role, which is different. And so I had that choice to make. And it felt like if I'd taken the senior role, that would have been safer. And, it would have just been carrying on doing the same. But I felt like this role was going to challenge me. And yes, I was really scared, but it felt like I'm going to get more out of this role than if I stick with being a senior. I sort of felt like if I took the role as a senior, I'd have the same feeling in another year or two of like not quite being satisfied and challenged. Whereas if I took the lead, yes, it is going to be like a big leap because this is quite a big role I'm in now, but I can grow in this role.
So then how do you deal with that imposter syndrome? Do you simply acknowledge that yes, it's unknown and it's scary, but you're just going to do it anyway?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think I just have myself something in my brain where I've got better as the years have gone on at trying to shut out that negative voice.
Mm,
Um, as I said, it's like that disbelief of when they offered me the job, like why are they offering it to me? I don't know what I'm doing. That's the negative part. But then my kind of rational brain is saying, well, they must think you can do it, otherwise they
mm.
wouldn't they wouldn't have offered you the job.
Oh yeah.
Um, and definitely working with my mentor's really helped. Like he's been a great kind of cheerleader when I have those moments of doubt and I think, oh, I can't do it, or just doubting yourself. Like he always helps me to reflect on that. And I also have a great manager now in my role who helps me with that too. But I think it's just trying to acknowledge when I have those thoughts and then trying not to let them overwhelm me, but kind of rationalize them. And
Mm.
if it is a genuine, like, there is something genuine there, then try to think, okay, what can I do about it? Um, yeah, that's sort of how I tackle it. But yeah, I still definitely get those days where I just think, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing at all. Yeah, but I think probably we all do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Join the club. But listen, these are really respectable organizations where I know people who work there, and I know a thing or two about the engineering cultures. They don't throw promotions around, and lead devs are serious roles there. So I'm sure you deserve every single bit of it. So well done. Um,
Thank you.
but you mentioned you don't have that much experience as a developer, not like 10, 20 years. A good chunk. You're very capable. You're very smart. You can do the job. You proved it time and time again. But have you ever had to like placate or prove to anyone that, or has there ever been any friction there where you've had to work around something or kind of prove to individuals or teams that you can do this or they should trust you?
I think definitely. So the role I'm in now, I have sort of felt it's been more difficult. So in previous roles, so at Parliament and even at Bopips as going, being the PM, like kind of leading the team in that way, you already know the people you're working with. You've already kind of earned their respect by, I guess, like being in the trenches with them, if you like. And especially at Parliament, like my team had said, we want you to be the lead, so you already have them on side. This has been a totally different experience. So I now work across multiple teams who don't know me, and it's remote. So it has been quite difficult, and it's still an ongoing job, like getting to know people and just understanding how the teams work. You don't want to go in and just start telling everybody, I think you should do it this way. That doesn't work. I know from being on the other side, you're looking at that
Mm,
person thinking, what do you know? So I think it's a gradual process. I think of the way I try and approach it is when I come into a new team, I think looking at how I can add value. So being more of a kind of trying to be a bit more like a facilitator. So an approach I've taken is just trying to talk to everybody individually, asking them what are the problems, what are the challenges, what can I, try and help you with, and trying to identify those things early on to sort of try and secure like, a win so the team can see, oh, she's doing this for us. And that's sort of been my try to be my tactic of how to approach it. But it is challenging, and particularly where I am now, it's the sort of technical challenge again of working with technologies that I don't know, systems that I didn't build, and you have to. I've also sort of recognized that because I am sitting, a lot higher than when you're just a developer, like there is only a certain amount of knowledge I can know. I'm never going to know the systems inside out like I would if I was coding on them. So it is also knowing who to rely on to like help you with that knowledge. You can't know everything yourself. So it is about then trying to work with the teams and getting enough knowledge so that you have enough to then help with decision making and sort of direction.
Sounds like a solid plan. I'm really happy you mentioned mentors there, because I mean, mentorship is really very important, and it can do wonders for your career and confidence and your progression. When when does a mentor come into the picture for you? How do you decide that you need one? How do you onboard a mentor? What's the ongoing relationship there?
So it's so it's been about a year, I think. So essentially what happened, so at Bowclips there were three kind of they were senior engineers who were the founding members of the tech team there, and they left. Oh, so yeah, it's been about a year. They left sort of at the beginning of last summer, sort of June time, and this was like a big deal because they'd like founded the team, they were leading the team, and then they were leaving. So it felt like a huge thing, and it was when I sort of was transitioning back from PM to dev, and so essentially then me and one of the other engineers was sort of proposed as the new like leads. We were going to be the lead engineers, and it was just incredibly daunting, and I respected them so much. They had a lot of experience. They'd come from Pivotal Labs, and so they had a huge amount of experience of working in that sort of with different companies. They just knew so much about all aspects of development, and it just felt like such huge shoes to fill. So one of them, we sort of talked, and he said, "I'm happy to keep in touch, and we can just try something out, see how it goes, like meet once every other week." And but so it started off as like a support for them leaving essentially, and now having to sort of fill this the space that they'd left. And then it sort of just quickly evolved. After that, like originally we'd talk through work stuff, but then as I said, I was starting to have this sort of feeling in my head that I wanted to leave, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so he helped me work through all of that. And now it's sort of more, it is more like we still meet every 2 weeks, but it's sort of more of I just bring whatever sort of things I want to talk about, and we talk about technical things. It's quite nice to have a safe space to talk about tech stuff. And as I said, because I don't always have as much experience as some other people, so it's a nice safe space to ask about, can we talk about databases, like, or can we talk about this thing that's come up, and I have anyone else to talk about, and just deep dive into it. So that's really nice. But he's also great to give me, as I said, that career advice, but also advice on leadership and people as well. So I find it really valuable. Just I always feel really positive. We have our conversations sort of on Friday mornings, like every other week, and I always just feel really positive when we've had a chat. He always makes me kind of feel better, and like, yes, I am doing the right thing, and when I'm sort of doubting myself. So that's been really powerful. And actually through him, he introduced me to someone else who I also talk to once a month, and she's an engineering manager, and so I find it also really helpful talking to her, because I did some management at Bowclips, and now management's even bigger part of my role now. So she sort of gives me that side, and we can talk about that sort of thing. I found them both incredibly useful.
And are you mentoring anyone yourself yet?
So I'm not. It's something I would like to do. So I guess I do. In my role now, I manage 4 people. Yeah, 4 people. So I do sort of mentoring through that, but not explicitly, no. But it is something I would like to do. Definitely, like start to give back in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd be a great mentor, for another, young leader in our field. Now, with your current role, I want to know what it is that you're passionate about as a lead. Because we spoke briefly about this. There's broadly speaking, the two tracks. You can be a very technical leader, or you can be a very people leader. And so tell me which way you've gone and why, and what you love about it.
So I'm definitely on the people side. I think I do still love the tech, but I feel like when I first learned to code, there's something inside that's like, I just get really excited, and I feel very passionate about helping people to learn and develop. And in particular, helping teams to be the best that they can be. I think I sort of learning about the sort of software process and the development process, I guess right back from makers, I felt like I sort of quickly learned, and things I've seen along the way, that a lot of the time it comes down to people. Like when there are, yes, there are technical problems that we have to solve, but a lot of the time though, it's about how the team is working, or those people problems, or teams working with other teams. Maybe, the team is too big. It's not the right team. We don't have the right people. And so I feel that for me is that's what I'm most interested in, and that's what kind of gives me my passion. So both like leading the teams in that way, but then also the people management side. I love doing one-to-ones with people. I love kind of helping people develop, trying to sort of draw out of them what are their goals and helping them to move towards them. I've also started to get quite passionate again about learning and development. I guess that comes from my like teaching background. And they're two things that I'm trying to focus on now when I have time at the MOJ, and helping, just sort of wider initiatives like giving people starting like a book club. I heard about there's this thing called code reading. It's quite interesting. I could send you a link after if you like. So started a club for that. The idea is that we learn to write code, but we don't necessarily learn to read code. So it's like a different skill. And the idea came from, we have a lot of legacy systems that we're trying to deal with. And so it's about being able to read and understand these systems rather than necessarily having to be able to write some of these more like legacy languages. It's about being able to read and understand them enough that we can then start to move away from them. So that's where that kind of idea came from. But I just sort of get quite passionate and interested in that kind of stuff.
That sounds very fascinating, actually. It is really important. We spend so much time reading code. It's probably a good idea to get good at it, right?
Yeah, it's about kind of like developing techniques. That's the way I kind of, there's a blog post I read about it. But because when we learn to write, we're writing greenfield, and we have different techniques, TDD, like architectural patterns you can follow, design patterns. But reading, it's just, I guess we all just work out our own way. So it's kind of about trying to develop techniques to be efficient. Like when you're faced with unfamiliar code, like what are techniques you can immediately apply, and like to try and draw out the meaning of it and understand what that developer was trying to do at the time.
Yeah, it's like reading minds, basically. In the past.
Yeah, sometimes even your own mind, what you were doing 6 months ago. So yeah,
I know. Yeah. I look at code I wrote 2 days ago, and I don't know what I was thinking.
I know, definitely.
So what does the future hold for you? Where do you want to head now? Are you completely satisfied? What yearnings are you identifying in yourself?
I think so. As I said earlier, my role is definitely really big. I think it's been a good and a bad thing is that the role is big, and it encompasses lots of different areas. So there's like engineering management, technical architecture, leadership. It is very all encompassing. Obviously, you can't do all of that at the same time because you're one person. So as things change and like priorities of the departments and teams change, I kind of move around a bit in those different roles. So it's been nice that I can, in a way, carve out like which bits I want to focus on. And that's been really nice. I guess the bad is that sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming and confusing because there's always a million things you could be doing, but you need to think about where do you prioritize yourself. So that's both good and bad. I feel like in my current role, I've still got a huge amount to learn, and I've got a lot of growth to do in that role. I think in the future, definitely staying in roles that focus around people. So maybe engineering management, that side of things, I think, more than the technical architecture route. I think that's the sort of side I want to stay in. I think that's probably for me.
I know you have a fantastic future ahead of you. Thank you very much for your time. This has been really fantastic, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future. When you've got your next big, greatest thing that you're doing.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it today too. Thank you.
Cheers, Rebecca. Awesome. And that's all, folks. More info, links, and everything else can be found on aheadintech.com. Thank you, and please subscribe.